Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I want to start today with a question for you. When you look at the world, I mean, right now you look at the elections, you look at the culture wars, just the way everything feels like it's vibrating at a frequency that's, I don't know, a little too high. What tool set do you reach for to explain it?
Well, the usual suspects, right. We reach for the humanities. We look at sociology, political science, maybe a bit of history or psychology. We look for opinions, for narratives.
Right, exactly. We look at the soft sciences. We ask, what are people feeling? Or, what's the historical precedent for this mess? But today, we are doing something completely different. We are, for the sake of this deep dive, throwing the soft sciences out the window.
Which I have to admit sounds a little dangerous, but you've got to stick with us on this one.
It is, but the premise is just too compelling.
Yeah.
We are looking at a source that argues that the exact same mathematical laws that govern how magnets work, how atoms stick together, how steel beams break under stress, are actually running our elections and our culture. And I want to be really clear here. I don't mean this is some vague metaphor. The source argues it is the literal same math.
It's a fascinating, and I have to say, a slightly terrifying premise. We're doing a deep dive into a piece titled The Thermodynamics of Culture by William L. Weaver. And his central argument, his whole thesis, is that sociology isn't a collection of opinions. He calls it, and this is a quote, condensed matter physics operating at a higher level of complexity.
Which is such a bold claim. I mean, it sounds like something a physicist would say at a party just to annoy sociologists.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. But the thing is, the way he lays it out, it's actually really hard to argue with the logic once you see the framework. He calls it the river of reality.
So that's our mission today. We're going to try and decode this river. We're going to walk you through 3 distinct physics metaphors. Well, Weaver would probably get mad at me and say they aren't metaphors, but let's call them frameworks for now.
Okay, frameworks.
Particle physics, thermodynamics, and then material science. And the goal here is to figure out why society feels so unstable right now, and maybe more importantly, how we might fix it.
And you know what I really appreciate about this approach and why I think you should really lean in is that it completely removes the emotion.
Which is so rare these days.
Incredibly rare, yeah. It stops being about my side is good, your side is evil, and it starts being about structural integrity. The question becomes, is the building sound? It really doesn't matter if you like the paint color on the walls if the foundation is cracked.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get to the skaters on the lake and the magnets, which are coming, and believe me, they are mind-blowing, we have to start with the foundational hypothesis. We've used this word isomorphism. I feel like I need a dictionary just to start. What is isomorphism?
It sounds super complex, but it's actually a really beautiful concept. Isomorphism is basically the hypothesis that patterns repeat across different levels of reality. Weaver uses a color-coded framework to explain it, which helps a lot.
Okay, colors I can do. Walk us through the colors.
Okay, so level 1 is red. That's pure energy, the raw stuff of the universe, quarks, gluons, all that.
Got it. Red.
Level 2 is green. That's matter. What happens when energy cools down and clumps together? Atoms, rocks, planets, that's green.
Red is energy, green is matter.
Okay.
And level 3 is blue. That's information and human society. It's what emerges from complex matter.
Red, green, blue. So far, so good.
Now, usually we act like these are 3 different universes, right? So they have 3 totally different rule books. The laws of gravity apply to a falling apple. That's a green level problem. But we don't think they apply to a conversation or a political movement, which is blue.
Right. I mean, a conversation doesn't have mass. You can't put an opinion on a scale.
Exactly. That's our default thinking. But isomorphism argues that the deep patterns, the fundamental rules that govern the red and the green, they don't just vanish when they emerge into the blue. They just change form. They sort of upgrade their operating system.
So it's kind of like nature is a lazy coder. It just reuses the same functions. Lives.
That is the perfect way to put it. Yes. Nature is incredibly efficient. If a specific algorithm works to bind quarks together to make a proton, and then it works again to bind atoms together to make a molecule, nature isn't going to just throw that out and invent a totally new system to bind people together to make a community.
It's going to reuse the code.
It's going to reuse the code. It's the same software. It's just running on much, much more complex hardware.
And if you accept that premise, that the laws of physics are effectively the laws of us, then you have to stop looking at sociology as just, people behaving weirdly.
Right.
You have to start looking at it as particles interacting according to a standard model.
Which brings us right to our first major section, The particle physics of agency. Weaver calls this the standard model of society. Now, I have to be honest, I did terrible in high school physics, so you're going to have to hold my hand here a little. What exactly is the standard model?
Don't worry, you're not alone. In physics, the standard model is basically our best theory for classifying all the known elementary particles. It's the who's who of the subatomic world, and it explains how they interact. The key thing to get, though, is that forces like magnetism or the weak nuclear force, they aren't magic.
They really feel like magic, though. I mean, you hold two magnets apart and you feel them push each other without touching. That's magic.
It feels that way, absolutely. But it's not. What's actually happening is that those particles are constantly exchanging other, even smaller particles called force carriers or bosons.
They're throwing things at each other.
They're literally throwing and catching little packets of information. One particle throws a boson, the other catches it, and that exchange, that simple act of throwing and catching, creates the force we feel.
Okay, so if we're mapping this to the blue level, to society, then we are the particles, you and me.
Correct. You and I and everyone listening, we're the particles in this model.
So what's the boson? What's the force carrier that we are throwing back and forth at each other to create the force we call society?
Weaver's argument is that the fundamental force carrier of the social world is choice.
Choice. Just
Choice.
choice. Agency. The act of making a decision.
Hold on a second. A boson is a physical thing, right? A photon, a gluon, it's real stuff. Choice is. Well, it's abstract. Is Weaver actually saying that my vote is a physical object?
He's saying it functions exactly like one within the system. And he uses this brilliant visual analogy to ground the idea. He wants you to imagine two skaters. They're standing on a perfectly frozen lake.
Okay, I'm picturing it. It's cold. They're on skates. So friction is basically zero.
Exactly. Low friction, that's key.
Okay.
Now imagine they have a medicine ball. A really heavy one.
Okay, a heavy ball.
If skater number one throws that heavy ball to skater number two, what happens to the person who threw it?
Well, Newton's third law, right? For
Yeah.
every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The act of throwing that heavy ball forward is going to push the skater backward.
Exactly. They slide back. Now the ball flies through the air. The second skater catches it. What happens to them? The impact of catching it pushes them backward, too.
Right. So the act of exchanging the ball created a repulsive force. They moved apart. But now imagine they want to stay together. Or maybe they want to establish a rhythm. Throw, catch, throw, catch. That constant exchange creates a physical dynamic between them. They are locked into a system that is defined entirely by that exchange. The force holding them in that pattern is generated by the transfer of the ball.
So in this analogy,
Yeah.
the medicine ball is my choice. It's my vote. It's my decision to buy something.
Yes. Every single time you exercise agency, you vote, you buy a specific brand of coffee, you post an opinion online, you sign a contract, you are throwing the ball. You are sending a packet of force out into the social system.
And for a bond to form,
Yeah.
someone has to catch it. That's the other half.
That is the absolute critical part of the whole model. If you throw the ball and the institution or the community catches it, meaning, they accept your vote and count it, they take your money and give you a product, they acknowledge your speech, a bond is formed. That exchange of choice is the binding agent of society. It's what holds the entire social lattice together.
That's a really powerful way to think about it because it gives a structural explanation for something like alienation. Because if I throw the ball and nobody catches it,
A force isn't exchanged. You just drift. The system doesn't register your existence.
like if I vote and I feel like the election was rigged or my vote just didn't matter, or if I, post something online and I'm shadow banned or maybe just completely ignored, I threw the ball, but there was no catch.
Exactly. The bond fails to form. And if that happens to millions of particles at once, if millions of people feel like their ball is never caught, the very structure of society begins to crumble. This is why being heard or having agency isn't just some, psychological need for validation.
It's a physics requirement.
In Weaver's model, it's a structural requirement for cohesion. You simply cannot build a solid material if the atoms aren't exchanging bosons. The whole thing just falls apart into dust.
It even makes me think about something as mundane as customer service. You call a company, you're trying to solve a problem, and you just get a bot. And you're screaming, agent, representative, into the phone. You're throwing the ball, and it's just hitting a wall. And you feel zero loyalty to that company. In fact, you hate them.
Because the exchange failed. There was no reciprocity of agency. Your choice, your action was ignored. The bond was broken before it even formed.
Okay, but here's where I want to push back a little bit, or at least where I start to get a little skeptical. In your skater analogy, everyone is equal. We're all just skaters on the ice.
Yeah.
But in the real world, my ball, my choice, it just doesn't weigh the same as, say, the president's ball or Elon Musk's ball.
That is absolutely true.
If I tweet, I don't like crypto, 3 people see it and my mom replies. If a famous billionaire tweets the exact same thing, the market crashes. Why? If we're all just particles, why do some particles have so much more impact? Does Weaver's model explain that kind of inequality?
He does, and it leads to what I think is one of the most fascinating parts of this whole deep dive. He uses the Higgs field to explain political power and influence.
The Higgs, okay, I've heard of that. That's the God particle thing, right? The thing they found at the Large Hadron Collider a while back?
Roughly, yeah. The particle gets all the press. But to really understand it, you need to understand the field, not just the particle. So in physics, the Higgs field is thought to permeate the entire universe. It's everywhere, all the time.
Like the Force in Star Wars.
A little bit. But a better analogy might be molasses. Think of it as invisible, cosmic molasses.
Molasses. Okay.
Yeah.
I can picture that.
The theory is that particles don't actually have mass inherently. They're not born heavy or light. They get their mass by interacting with this field. So as they move through the molasses of the Higgs field, they experience a kind of resistance, a drag. That resistance is what we perceive and measure as mass.
So if a particle interacts a lot with the molasses, it gets heavy.
Yes. And if it doesn't interact at all, like a photon, a particle of light, it just zips right through at the speed of light. It has no mass. It's too flighty to form an atom or anything stable.
Okay, I think I'm with you on the physics. So how does this apply to the guy running for president or a CEO?
Weaver argues that society has its own version of this, a social Higgs field. And that field is public belief.
Public belief.
Just collective belief. And he has another great visual for this. Picture a crowded cocktail party. That room and all the people in it, that's the social Higgs field. The room is full of people. That's the medium of the field.
Okay, I'm there. I got my little drink. I'm awkwardly looking for the snacks.
Laughs. Right. Nobody walks into the room. Let's say just a random guy named Dave. Dave wants to walk from the door to the bar. What happens as he moves through the crowd?
Nothing, really. He just walks to the bar. People might move out of his way, but that's it.
Does the crowd stop him? Do they cluster around him and pay attention to him?
No, of course not. He just weaves through the gaps.
Exactly. In the language of physics, Dave is massless. He encounters no resistance from the field. He moves easily, but he also has no gravity. He can't pull anyone into his orbit. He has no influence. But now, right after Dave, imagine a massive celebrity walks in, or a powerful world leader. Someone everyone in that room recognizes and has an opinion about.
Yeah.
What happens to the room now?
Oh, the energy changes instantly. The whole room shifts. The crowd clumps up. Everyone stops what they're doing. They circle around that person. It actually becomes hard for that person to move because everyone wants a selfie or wants to shake their hand.
Right. That clumping of the crowd is the mass. Weaver calls it political mass. But here is the profound and almost philosophical insight he pulls from this. That mass is not inside the leader.
Wait. Unpack that for me. Because we usually think of charisma or power as something you have. It's an internal quality.
And Weaver is saying no. The weight of that leader, their gravitas, their ability to influence that room, is generated entirely by their interaction with the field. It is the collective belief of the crowd that actually creates the mass.
So the leader isn't heavy. The crowd is making them heavy by paying attention.
Precisely. The leader feels heavy. They have weight in the room, only because the field of public belief is clumping around them.
Which implies something kind of scary about fame and power, doesn't it?
It implies that it's not real, or at least that it can vanish in an instant.
Right. Because if the mass isn't intrinsic to the person.
If the belief evaporates, the mass disappears instantly.
And we've seen this. We see this all the time. A CEO is a titan of industry. They seem untouchable and immovable. They have so much gravity. Then a scandal hits. Maybe they committed fraud. Maybe they said something terrible in a leaked video. What happens?
The field stops clumping. The public belief, the Higgs field, switches off for that specific particle. The molasses just disappears around them.
And suddenly they're just a guy in a suit standing alone in a room.
Exactly. They didn't lose any atoms. They didn't get dumber. Their voice sounds the same. But they lost all their political mass because the field stopped interacting with them. They become Dave.
That is such a powerful way to visualize it. It almost explains something like cancel culture. in a purely physics way. It's just a rapid phase transition where the field collectively decides we're no longer giving you mass.
And it makes power incredibly fragile. It's not yours. It's on loan from the field. It's borrowed from the belief of others.
Okay, so this is a great foundation. We've got particles, which are us. We've got our force carriers, which is choice. And we've got mass, which is given to us by belief that sets up all the actors on the stage.
Right.
But now we need to talk about the stage itself, because right now the stage feels, I don't know, dangerous. It feels volatile.
It feels hot.
It feels very hot, yes. And this is where Weaver pivots from particle physics to the big one, thermodynamics. He introduces something called the Ising Model. Now, be honest, had you heard of this before you read this article?
I had, but only in the specific context of magnets. The Ising model is a huge deal in statistical mechanics. It's basically a mathematical model that's used to predict how ferromagnets behave when you heat them up.
Okay, so magnets in heat. I feel like we're back in 8th grade science class. Lay it out for us. How does a magnet work in the simplest possible terms?
In the simplest terms, a block of iron is magnetic because all the little atoms inside it, which each act like a tiny compass needle, are all lined up and pointing in the same direction. They are cooperating.
They're organized. They've all agreed. We're all pointing north.
Right, and they form a coherent field. Now, in the math of the Ising model, the stability of that block of iron isn't guaranteed. It's actually a war. A literal mathematical war between two competing variables.
Who are the combatants in this war?
On one side, you have the coupling constant, which is represented by the letter J. This is the force that makes a particle want to align with its neighbors. It's the peer pressure of the atomic world. It's the little voice that says, hey, the guy next to me is pointing north, so I should probably point north too.
Okay, so J is the glue. It's the desire for order and alignment.
J is the glue, absolutely. On the other side of the war, you have temperature, which is represented by T.
And what is temperature, really, at a particle level? It's not just a number on a thermometer.
No, it's motion. Temperature is just random thermal energy. It's vibration. It's chaos. It shakes the particles. It's the little voice that says, don't look at your neighbors. Spin around. Go crazy. Do your own thing.
So J wants order and T wants chaos. Stability is a battle between them.
Exactly. And at room temperature for a block of iron, the desire to stick together, the J is much stronger than the random heat, the T. So the block stays magnetic. It's stable. But if you throw that block of iron into a furnace,
The heat goes up, the T starts rising.
the T rises, the atoms start vibrating more and more violently, the T is attacking the J. And here's the really scary part. The magnetism doesn't fade away slowly. You don't lose 1% of your magnetism, then 2%, then 3%.
It's not a linear decline.
It is not linear at all. As T rises, the magnet holds, and it holds, and it holds, and then you hit a critical mathematical limit. It's called the Curie Point, and it's a phase transition. In a single instant, the thermal energy overwhelms the coupling constant. T beats J, and the entire structure collapses. The magnetism drops to 0 immediately. The order dissolves into pure noise.
That is a terrifying image.
Yeah.
A sudden, catastrophic collapse of structure. Now, Weaver maps this to our world, and I have a really bad feeling I know where this is going. What is our J and what is our T?
This is where the diagnosis in the article gets pretty chilling. Weaver argues that culture is our coupling constant, J.
Culture is the glue.
Yes. Shared values, traditions, national myths, religious beliefs, the feeling that I am like my neighbor, we are in this together, we believe in the same constitution. That is the force that aligns us. That's what keeps all the little human atoms pointing roughly north.
And T, what is the heat shaking us apart?
Information is the temperature, T.
Information is the heat. That feels counterintuitive. We usually think information is a good thing, an informed citizenry is the bedrock of democracy, all that.
Weaver really challenges that assumption. Think about what heat does to a physical atom. It makes it vibrate. It introduces noise. It creates jitter. Now think about what the modern information environment does to you.
Oh, God. The 24-hour news cycle. Twitter, TikTok, the economic stress alerts, the constant ding of your phone with a new outrage.
It creates internal vibration. We're being shaken constantly by new data, new outrages, new technologies, completely contradictory narratives. That is a high T environment.
I actually feel this physically. When you doom scroll for an hour before bed, you don't feel informed. You feel hot. You feel anxious. Your mind is scattered.
That is your internal state vibrating. That's high T, shaking your personal lattice.
So if stability is a war between culture, RJ, and information, RT,
then we are in some serious trouble. Because just look at the graph of our civilization. T is skyrocketing. The amount of information, noise, and entropy we are pumping into the system is exponential. But at the same time, what is happening to our culture, our J?
It feels like it's fragmenting. It's going down. We don't have the same shared stories anymore. We don't watch the same TV news. We don't trust the same institutions.
Yeah.
J is going down while T is going up.
We are turning up the heat in the furnace, and we are actively dissolving the glue at the exact same time.
Which means we are racing toward the social Curie point.
Weaver warns that mathematically we are destined to hit it if we don't change one of the variables. It's not a matter of opinion, it's just the inevitable outcome of the equation.
What does a social Curie point look like in the real world? Because for a magnet, it just, falls off the fridge. For a civilization, that sounds a lot worse.
It looks like a sudden, catastrophic loss of coherence. The magnetism of the state just vanishes. Think about the collapse of the Soviet Union.
That happened incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast. For decades, it seemed like this monolithic, immovable block of iron. It seemed permanent. But the internal heat, the economic inefficiency, the systemic lies, the information leaking in from the West, that T was rising, and the glue, the belief in communism, the J was weakening. It was rotting from the inside.
And then one day,
Poof.
poof, the wall falls. The structure dissolves into 15 different countries. It wasn't a slow decline. It was a phased transition. Or think of a bank run. A bank is stable until it isn't. Trust evaporates in a matter of hours, not years. That sudden loss of belief is the Curie point. It explains why everything feels so polarized right now. It's not just that we disagree with our neighbors about politics. It's that the noise, the T, is so loud we can't even hear our neighbors anymore. We can't lock on to a shared signal.
The random thermal energy is louder than the signal of culture. The noise is overwhelming the music.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis. And I have to say, it's bleak. We are in a high T world. The furnace is on full blast. And we can't really turn off the internet. We can't stop AI. We can't stop the flow of information.
No, you cannot realistically lower T. That's not a viable strategy. That horse has left the barn.
So what do we do? How do we survive? If we don't want to melt, if you don't want to hit that Curie point and just dissolve into noise, what are our options?
This brings us to the third, and I think the most practical and hopeful part of Weaver's framework, material science.
I love that we're moving from theoretical physics to engineering, because now it feels like we can build something. We can be proactive.
Exactly. If you're an engineer and you have to build a structure that can survive in a high heat, high stress environment, you have to choose your material very, very carefully. You can't use wax, you can't use wood. Weaver uses the engineering tool, the stress strain curve, to offer us 3 options for what kind of society we can choose to be.
Okay, lay out the options for us. What's option number 1?
Option 1 is glass.
Glass.
In engineering terms, glass has very high stiffness. It resists change. If you push on it, it pushes back hard. It doesn't bend. It doesn't deform.
What does a glass society look like? What's the real world equivalent?
It looks like a very rigid culture, maybe a totalitarian regime that suppresses all dissent, or even just a very traditionalist society that refuses to adapt to new realities. It's the society that says, we will not bend, we will stay exactly as we are, we will ban the books, we will block the internet, we will enforce orthodoxy.
That sounds strong, though. Will not bend. It has a ring of principle to it.
It feels strong. In the same way a ceramic plate feels hard. You can tap it with your knuckle and it feels solid and reliable. But the fatal flaw of stiffness is that it has no mechanism to absorb energy.
Because it can't move. It can't give.
It can't deform. So if you apply too much stress, if you drop a ceramic plate, it doesn't get a dent in it. It shatters into 1,000 pieces.
Right. It's a catastrophic total failure.
And Weaver argues that stiffness is constantly mistaken for strength. A glass society works perfectly fine until the moment the stress exceeds its limit, and then it explodes. It cannot handle the high T world because its only strategy is to try and block the heat rather than processing it.
Okay, so glass is bad. We don't want to shatter. What's option 2?
Option 2 is rubber.
Rubber. This corresponds to resilience, I'm guessing?
Yes, exactly. We hear this word all the time. We need resilient communities. We need a resilient economy.
The buzzword is bounce back.
Exactly, and that's what rubber does. It can stretch. If you pull a rubber band, it deforms, it absorbs the energy of the stress, and then when you let it go, it snaps right back to its original shape.
That does a lot better than glass.
Oh, it's much better than glass. It survives the stress, which glass doesn't. But Weaver points out a very critical and subtle flaw in the concept of resilience.
What's the flaw?
A rubber band doesn't get stronger when you stretch it. It just returns to zero. It resets the system to how it was in the past.
So it's inherently stagnant, it's backward-looking.
It's conservative adaptation. Its only goal is to get back to normal.
Yeah.
But in a high-T world where the heat is constantly rising, where the stresses are always new and always increasing, simply bouncing back to yesterday's shape isn't good enough. You're just treading water. You aren't actually adapting, you're just surviving.
So glass shatters and rubber stagnates. We need something that actually gets better, that gets stronger when you stress it, which I have to say sounds like magic.
It's not magic, it's biology. And it's also metallurgy. We need option 3. We need to be muscle. Muscle.
Weaver uses the term coined by Nassim Taleb, antifragility.
I've heard that term. The opposite of fragile isn't robust, it's something that gains from disorder.
Exactly. And Weaver applies it here through the specific mechanism of work hardening. Now think about going to the gym. We use the phrase building muscle, but what are we actually doing when we lift a heavy weight?
We're tearing it. We're causing damage.
Yes, we are stressing the material to the point of failure. We are causing thousands of micro tears in the muscle fibers. In engineering, this is called plastic deformation. You are permanently changing the structure of the material.
That sounds bad. Permanent damage. Doesn't sound like something you'd want.
But it's necessary damage, because the body recognizes that damage as a signal. The body says, whoa, that load was heavy, that almost broke us. We need to be ready for that next time. So it repairs the tears, but it doesn't just patch them up. It overcompensates. It reinforces them. It makes the fiber denser, thicker, and stronger than it was before.
So the strength is a direct result of the damage. You can't get the strength without the stress. Precisely. The strength is a physical record of the stress the system has endured.
And Weaver talks about this in metals too, right? This isn't just a biological analogy.
Right, and this is the real deep dive part. In metallurgy, if you take a piece of soft, cold metal and you beat it with a hammer, you are actually tangling up the atomic crystal structure.
Tangling it, what does that mean?
Well, metal crystals have these little imperfections in their lattice called dislocations. They're like little defects that allow layers of atoms to slide past each other. That's what makes a metal soft. When you hammer the metal, these dislocations are forced to move around and they get tangled up with each other. It's like creating a traffic jam at the atomic level.
And a traffic jam makes it harder, stiffer.
Yes, because the atoms can no longer slide past each other easily. The mess you've created with the hammer is what creates the strength. This process is literally called work hardening.
That is fascinating. So a pristine, perfect crystal is actually weak and soft.
It's very soft, yes. The tangled, beaten, stressed, imperfect crystal is the strong one.
So if we apply this to society, Weaver's basically saying we need to be beaten. We need to be damaged.
He's saying we need to stop being so afraid of stress. A level 3 civilization, what he would call a mature society, must be anti-fragile. It must learn to use the stress of the high-T world, the political arguments, the economic shifts, the technological disruptions, as the very mechanism to restructure itself into something stronger.
So we shouldn't try to be glass and block the stress. We shouldn't try to be rubber and just bounce back from it. We should actually harness the stress to upgrade our social lattice.
Exactly. That's the only winning strategy in a high-T world.
But, and this feels like the climax of the entire argument, there's a catch. There's a way to cheat, a way to fake this process.
Yes. And this, to me, is the most critical warning in the entire text. Weaver makes a sharp distinction between genuine work hardening and what he calls false hardening. And we really need to spend some time here because this one concept explains so much of what feels broken in our systems today.
Okay, let's drill down. Genuine work hardening. We just described it. It's going to the gym. It's hammering the metal.
And it is path dependent. That's the key. It means you cannot acquire the strength without traversing the path of the stress. You have to do the reps. You have to feel the burn.
There are no shortcuts to real strength.
There are absolutely no shortcuts in physics. In societal terms, Weaver maps this directly to meritocracy and equality of opportunity.
How so? What's the connection?
Imagine society is that block of metal we're hammering. Every atom, every person, every business, every idea needs the opportunity to bear the load. When the stress comes, those elements that successfully deform and reorganize, the people who learn new skills, the companies that adapt, the ideas that survive scrutiny, they contribute to the hardening of the whole structure.
So the strength of the whole is real because actual work was performed at the individual level. Force times distance. It's real physics.
Physics doesn't lie. Work was done, so strength was gained. The system earned its new capacity. But now look at the alternative he presents, false hardening.
Okay, what is false hardening?
Weaver maps this to the idea of equality of outcome. But let's stick with the engineering metaphor first because it's so clear.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine you have a beam of soft iron. It's not strong enough to hold up the roof. It hasn't been work hardened. It's weak.
Okay, so if you put it in place, the roof is going to collapse.
Right. Now, the ideal thing to do would be to take that beam out and hammer it. Work harden it. But that takes time and energy, and it's painful. So instead, you put some invisible scaffolding under it. You prop it up from below.
You cheat the test.
You support it with external forces. Now, to an outside observer, it looks like the iron beam is doing the job. It looks like strong steel. It's holding the roof up. The outcome looks correct.
But internally, what about its microstructure?
Internally, its microstructure hasn't changed one bit. It is still soft iron. It has not earned the capacity to hold that load. It's faking it.
And Weaver has a term for this. He calls it the anti-genuine.
Yes. And in society, this is what happens when we use things like subsidies, lowered standards, cronyism, or artificial selection to ensure a specific outcome, regardless of actual performance.
Can you give me a concrete example of that?
The most obvious one is a company that is deemed too big to fail.
Oh, right. The 2008 financial crisis.
That company is the soft iron beam. The stress of the market, the load on the roof is saying, you are not strong enough, you are inefficient, you made bad bets, you should deform or fail. But instead of letting it happen, the government comes in with scaffolding, a bailout.
So the company survives. The outcome is protected.
It survives, it looks like it's strong, it's still standing, but did it internally restructure? Did it learn from its mistakes? Did it get more efficient? Did it fix its bad practices?
No. It just got propped up and went back to business as usual.
So now you have a major structural element in your economy that looks like steel, but has the internal properties of soft iron. You have created a dangerous illusion of capacity.
And that's dangerous because...
It's catastrophic, because eventually the scaffolding might be removed. Or even worse, the heat, the T, rises to a level that even the scaffolding can't handle. And when that beam finally fails under a real load, doesn't just bend, it collapses. And because you trusted it to hold up the entire roof, the whole building comes down with it.
This applies to so many other areas too. I'm thinking about education. If we lower standards so that everyone passes a class.
That is a perfect example of false hardening. If you give a student a degree they didn't earn through genuine work, you are sending a soft iron beam out into the world that is labeled as hardened steel. You are telling a bridge builder, this engineer is strong. But when the real stress comes, when they actually have to design a bridge that can handle a hurricane, they fail and people get hurt.
It really reframes the whole debate about fairness, doesn't it? It takes it out of the realm of, what's nice or what feels good and puts it squarely into the realm of what stands up.
Structural integrity doesn't care about our feelings. It is ruthlessly objective. It only cares about the physics. If the work wasn't done, the strength isn't there. Period.
So we have this fundamental choice. We can build a society of muscle, which is hard and it's painful, and it requires enduring actual stress. Or we can build a society of scaffolding, which looks nice and equitable on the surface, but is secretly dangerously fragile.
And Weaver's great fear, which I think is palpable in the writing, is that we are increasingly choosing the scaffolding. We are choosing false hardening because real work hardening hurts. It's uncomfortable to be hammered. It's easier to prop things up.
But if we don't do it, the Curie Point is waiting.
The Curie Point is waiting.
Man, okay, this is a lot to take in. Let's just zoom out for a second and recap the entire narrative arc because we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, let's tie it all together.
We started with the basic premise of isomorphism, the idea that the laws of physics are the laws of us.
We are particles in a system governed by rules, not just opinions.
Then we talked about choice as the force carrier, the medicine ball between the skaters. If we don't catch the ball, if our agency is ignored, the bond breaks. We are drifting apart because we aren't completing that fundamental exchange.
And we talked about the Higgs field of public belief, how leaders and institutions only have mass because we, the field, grant it to them. That mass is borrowed, and it is incredibly fragile.
Then we got to the scary part, the Ising Model, The war between culture and information.
Right.
We established that we are living in a high-T world. The heat of information is shaking us apart, and our glue, our shared culture, seems to be melting.
And finally, that led us to the solution. The choice of material for our society. We cannot be glass and try to rigidly block the change. We will shatter. And we cannot be rubber and just try to bounce back to the past. We will stagnate and eventually be overwhelmed.
Which leaves only one option. We must become muscle. We must become anti-fragile. We must use the inevitable stress of the modern world to work harden the lattice of society. But, and this is the big but, it has to be genuine. No scaffolding, no faking the reps.
It's a remarkably comprehensive framework. It really does change how you watch the nightly news.
It really does.
Huh.
When I see a Twitter fight now, I don't see discourse. I see thermal energy. I just see tea rising.
And when you see a government bailout, or a university lowering its standards, or a blatant case of nepotism,
I see false hardening. I see a soft beam being painted to look like steel.
So what's the final takeaway here for the listener? We aren't politicians. We're not material scientists. We're just particles.
Yeah, just little particles floating around in the cosmic molasses.
But remember, particles have agency. We throw the ball. That's the one thing we control.
Right.
I think the takeaway is to start looking at your own life and your own community through this lens. Where are you being rigid? Where are you being rigid and refusing to update your worldview in the face of new information?
And where are you being rubber?
Yeah.
Where are you just wishing for things to go back to normal instead of adapting to the new reality?
And most importantly, where are you actually work hardening? Where are you leaning into the stress? If you lost your job or are stressed about the economy, are you just waiting for a bailout, for some external scaffolding? Or are you reskilling? Are you learning? Are you work hardening your own capability?
Like tangling up your own dislocations to get stronger?
Exactly. And on a community level, it's the same thing. Are we building real bonds? Are we catching the medicine balls that our neighbors are throwing at us? Are we doing the hard work of strengthening our culture, our J, so that we can handle the rising heat? Because the heat is not going down.
No, the heat is definitely not going down. The future is going to be a high-temperature environment. That much is certain.
The material has to upgrade. There's no other choice.
Weaver ends the piece with a question that I think we should just leave hanging in the air for everyone. He asks, are we building a society that rewards genuine work hardening, where strength is a function of the load endured? Or are we building false hardening, creating a structure that looks like steel but will fail when the heat truly rises?
It really is the ultimate engineering propulsion for the 21st century. And we are all the architects, whether we like it or not.
That is a heavy thought to end on, but a very necessary one. A big thanks to William L. Weaver for the source material, The Thermodynamics of Culture. This is one of those deep dives that's going to stick with me for a long, long time.
Absolutely. Stay fluid, but stay strong.
Stay anti-fragile. Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep throwing those medicine balls and maybe try to catch a few, too. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Take care.